Hey, lighten up, jerk!
Yeah, and that's what happened to me 10 years ago. And then since then, just different challenges after challenges. The Lord has been taking me through those challenges, and all the way to the point of where, I decided with my family. I have a wife and a kid right now. Her name is Eloise. She was born in China. But 3 years ago, my wife and we decided to go to, and at that time, I had my firstborn daughter, Scarlet.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember.
I remember.
Yeah, it was.
And so we went there together, and then, that's a whole nother story. But long story short, our little Scarlet started getting ill. We find out she had a brain tumor, the size of an inch. And you can imagine she has a small skull, she's a baby. But it starts blocking the flow of fluids in her brain. And it was ATRT, which was like the worst and most aggressive kind of tumor, brain tumor for children. Only maybe like 30 cases in America, so not many case studies. But then that's not what broke me. It was when the doctor came to me and gave me the diagnosis, and the diagnosis was 100% fatality, and that she wouldn't make it, and that she would certainly die. And at that moment, I just broke down in tears, started crying. Through it all, long story short, we had her. She passed away in our arms. And she passed away on April 8th, and then instead of burying her in America, we cremated her because we wanted to follow customs. And check this out, this is just the goodness of God, of how when we trust God with our lives, God begins to make a story out of our lives. And that when I received the ashes, it was wrapped in scarlet cloth. And her name was Scarlet. And immediately God spoke to me saying that she had a short life, but it was a well-lived life. And even to this day, her story is touching so many. I shared the story everywhere. And we buried her on a mountain, and my wife and we decided that we can't leave our daughter. So instead of coming back to America and like settling down in America, we decided to just keep doing ministry in and plant ourselves there. And so we've been there for about 3 years, learning the language and ministering to the locals and building great friendships and doing things for God there. Yeah.
So that was this time. This was like 2013, right?
Yeah, 2013. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that like I've heard too, like, you know, something like traumatic like that happening for, you know, you and your wife. Sometimes that's like, you know, there's a lot of, you know, blame going on. It's like, oh, you know, you brought us here, this happened, and like, you know, was there anything like that, like,
you mean from my wife?
Yeah, like
Or
between
like,
you guys, or vice versa?
Because it would be understandable,
Yeah.
like if if bitterness would develop from that situation. I mean, I think it'd be kind of like everyone would understand, like if you develop the bitterness towards God because of that, losing a child and all that stuff. But I mean, did you ever have like moments where, like little bits of like bitterness like crept in, or?
These are great questions, and I think a normal, maybe if God had sent me to maybe like a year before, I could have developed maybe a bitterness. But then I went in already knowing that God is good. And because the goodness of God over my life, and that circumstances is not God. Circumstances are circumstances. But then it was just so clear that in the midst of these circumstances, God was good. And because that became my foundation and my wife's foundation, now that you mention it, like, I'm so thankful for my wife, and thankful for God who like fueled her faith at that time. But we both were on the same page. Like, ultimately God is good. And that if God exists, then there's also another entity who is far inferior, but he loves to bring destruction to people. And that's the enemy. That's Satan, the devil, the accuser of the brethren, the liar who's been lying even before the foundations of the world. And he constantly is the great deceiver, right? And he's the one who just keeps saying God isn't that good. But I feel like that is an injustice to say that kind of thing to a good God. Yeah. And at that time, like, yeah, God was so good. And that actually got us through those circumstances and losing our child. And even to this day, I think that became the foundation of our lives. Yeah, knowing that in the midst of all these hardships, that God became my refuge. That God is someone that I could run to. And actually find shelter and find rest. Yeah, and it's cool because when my Scarlet was in the hospital, some people would come and babysit and be with Scarlet, and that'd give us a little brief time to come out and have like dinners. And then my wife and I would have dinners, and then my wife would be reading the Bible, and then I'll be like, "Why are you reading the Bible?" Like at that time I hadn't seen my wife reading the Bible that much, so I was like, "Why are you reading the Bible?" I was just curious, and then she was like, what she spoke really spoke to me a lot. She said, "This is the only place that I can find peace." And it hit me so hard. I was like, it's true. That is the only place that we can find peace. And so for us, God like used those circumstances, what the enemy tried to destroy. God can win with any hand, right? And He's always committed to us. And like during that time, like the things that were happening, it revamped our spiritual life like crazy. We started getting back into the Word like crazy, and like read every single day, and kept on praying for our daughter. We prayed like crazy, nonstop from morning till night, like on our knees. And like even when we had family conflicts, we'd be like, there's someone that's dying. Family conflicts and tension is so insignificant to the fact that our daughter is dying. Why are we even fighting? And that was a testimony too. Death, our daughter was about to die, actually brought our family together. Like my wife and my mom, they reconciled, because at one point I got fed up. The Spirit of the Lord came upon me. Like Samson. And I was like, why the heck are we fighting right now? This is not the important issue. The important thing is that someone's about to die and we're fighting. Like we have to reconcile. Like we have to lay down every sin. We have to lay down everything that's spoiling our lives, because that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is saving this life. And anything that would hinder that, we gotta lay it down. And so like we lay down tensions, like we hugged, like we cried. Man, and like seriously, like these terrible circumstances and obstacles, it can either become a tool for change or an enemy. When it becomes an enemy, then we fall into depression and even more hardships and a downward spiral, and like even at the most extreme level, maybe suicidal thoughts, right? But then when we use like near-death experiences, or like losing loved ones, or like obstacles and challenges as tools for change, there's unlimited possibilities in God to get back up. Yeah.
It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's why it's important to really have that firm foundation. And I remember when we were going through that. I remember, I met Scarlet a few times. She was adorable.
Oh yeah.
But man, like you telling the story again in detail, it's just even more powerful,